All right, so OpenAI just dropped its latest model, GPT-5. And the hype is, well, it's pretty massive. So today we're going to cut right through all that noise and get straight to the data. We're deconstructing its performance, benchmark by benchmark, to see what's really. I mean, right out of the gate, you've got early testers making some really bold statements. The CEO of Cursor, which is an AI-first code editor, called GPT-5 the smartest model they've used. That is a pretty big claim, right? So let's see if the numbers actually back that up. So OpenAI is saying this thing is a monster when it comes to coding, and for what they're calling agentic tasks. But what does that actually mean in the real world? What can it do that the last model couldn't? That's the question we're really digging into here. Okay, so the first big promise here is that GPT-5 is basically the ultimate coding partner. And we're not just talking about a slightly better autocomplete. The idea is that this is a true collaborator that can actually help you navigate complex software projects. This is the million-dollar question for any developer, isn't it? Is this just a small incremental improvement, or is it a genuine step change? Well, lucky for us, we've got some hard numbers to look at. First up, the ADER polyglot benchmark. GPT-5 hits 88% accuracy here. Now, that sets a new state of the art, a really significant jump from its predecessor's 81%. But before we get too excited, what even is this benchmark? What does it test? It's actually pretty straightforward. ADER polyglot measures how well an AI can take a specific instruction for a change or an edit and then apply it correctly to code. And it does this across a whole bunch of different programming languages. So it's really a test of precision, understanding, and versatility. Now, that 7-point jump from 81 to 88% might not sound like a huge number, but think about what it actually means. It translates to a 1/3 reduction in the model's error rate. In practice, that's huge. It means you're spending way less time debugging the AI's work, which makes it a much more reliable partner. And this is where it gets even more impressive. On the SW Bench Verified test, GPT-5 scores nearly 75%. And this isn't some clean academic test, no. This uses actual bug reports from GitHub and asks the AI to generate the fix. For a messy, difficult, real-world task like that, a score like this is a massive achievement. So when you put them head-to-head like this, the difference is just crystal clear. Whether it's the 75% on SW Bench or the 88% on ADER Polyglot, GPT-5 is consistently outperforming the old models, and not just by a little bit. This isn't an improvement on just one thing. It's a major step up across very different kinds of coding challenges. And this brings us right back to what the CEO of Cursor was talking about. It's not just about writing new code from scratch. It's about being able to understand these huge, complex code bases well enough to find those subtle, deeply hidden bugs. You know, the kinds of problems that even experienced developers can spend hours hunting for. So the coding stuff is impressive, for sure, but it's really only one piece of the puzzle. The next major leap forward is in what OpenAI is calling agentic tasks, which is all about moving beyond single questions and answers to completing entire projects. So what is an agentic task? Well, think of it this way. It's the difference between asking an assistant to book this one flight versus telling them to plan my entire weekend trip to Chicago. One is a single, simple command. The other, that's a complex, multi-step project that requires planning and the ability to self-correct along the way. And here's a concrete example of that in action. When you ask GPT-5 to build a restaurant website, it doesn't just spit out a giant wall of code. No, it has a process. First, it plans the whole structure. Then it scaffolds out the basic files and dependencies. Then it writes the actual content. After that, it actually checks its own work for errors and then reports back on what it did. It's a complete workflow. And if you want the cold, hard proof of this new agentic power, just look at this number. On the Tau Square bench, a benchmark designed to be incredibly difficult for agents, GPT-5 scores a staggering 96.7%. The previous best score from any model was just 58%. That isn't just an improvement, it's a total game changer. It's in a different league entirely. So what a crazy score like that really means is that GPT-5 can handle complex, long-running tasks. It can reliably chain together dozens of different actions, calling different tools, running tasks one after another, or even at the same time, all without losing track of what the original goal was. And again, we see this backed up by partners. The co-founder of Manus, a company that specializes in AI agents, confirmed that GPT-5 set new records on their own internal tests. He specifically highlighted how stable and steerable it was right out of the box.
Of course, all this power is kind of meaningless if the model isn't trustworthy or if developers can't control it. So the third major area of improvement is all about reliability and steerability.
And here's a huge one, reliability. On standard fact-checking benchmarks, GPT-5 reduces those factual errors, or hallucinations, by about 80% compared to its predecessor. 80%! That is a massive, massive improvement. This increased factuality is absolutely critical. It makes the model so much more suitable for professional work. For any use case where getting things right is non-negotiable, like in data analysis, generating reliable code, or supporting important business decisions.
OpenAI is also giving developers more direct control, like with this new verbosity parameter. For a question like, why is the sky blue? If you set verbosity to low, you get a direct scientific answer. But if you set it to high, you get a whole comprehensive explanation with all the extra context. You get to choose.
And there's more. Developers can also now tune the reasoning effort. So you can decide, do you need a deep, thoughtful answer that takes a bit longer? Or do you just need a quick, immediate response? You can now explicitly ask for one or the other, trading off between depth and speed. So after looking at all these benchmarks and these new features, what's the big picture? What does this leap forward really mean when you put it all together? Okay, let's recap. We've seen from the benchmarks that GPT-5 is a new state-of-the-art coding partner. It's capable of tackling these complex, multi-step projects from start to finish. It's significantly more reliable and way less prone to making up facts. And with new controls, it's more steerable and better at following very specific, nuanced instructions.
In the end, GPT-5 has clearly set a new, higher benchmark across the board. The real story isn't just better scores, but a fundamental shift from a simple tool to an autonomous agent. So the question it leaves us with is a big one. Now that we have an AI that can plan and execute complex projects all on its own, what truly hard problems will we ask it to solve next?